Right. Welcome all of you, and good evening, good afternoon, good morning to everyone who is joining us from whichever part of the world you belong to. I am Shraddha Verma, co-founder of Fuchsia, and today is a wonderful day for us because it's a book launch event for our very own Shellye, who has, and you all know how Shellye has been constantly the guiding light for us every month. And today it's a time to rejoice because we have come up with this book launch event for her book, Unapologetically Ambitious. Take risks, break barriers, and create success on your own terms. Uh, Indeed, this is a wonderful part of the session because today we have a guest moderator with us, Mr. Niraj Sharan. And what else could I say apart from being Shelly's close friend? Niraj also is. I'll say just a quick introduction that Niraj is BE in Electronics and Communication Engineer from BIT Mesra, India. And he has done his master's in computer science from Stevens Institute of Technology, New Jersey. Not only this, he is in the Government of India Tech Board member, and he runs, having been, in the last 4 years, he has been into entrepreneurship, and he runs engineering and manufacturing companies in India, Italy, and the US. Niraj, I welcome you to this live session, and it's my total pleasure to have you moderate this session for today.
Thank you, Shraddha. Thank you for a very, very generous introduction. And as I said, good morning, good afternoon, good evening. I know we've got audience from across the world. We've got audience from Europe, Asia, Africa, the Americas. And good morning to Shellye. Thank you. It's a pleasure to be on the same screen with you. And it's a real pleasure and honor today for me to introduce Shellye Archambeau, the former Chief Executive Officer of MetricStream. And I know that Reid Hoffman, the co-founder and the former executive chairman of LinkedIn, says about Shellye as the woman who has pulled off the most incredible turnaround in the tech sector in the Silicon Valley that we've ever seen. Coming from him, it's a big, big validation. That's for you, Shellye. So as we know, and for others to know, that Shellye Archambeau sits on the board of many companies. I'll just name a few: Nordstrom, Verizon, Roper Technologies, and Okta. She's advising the Royal Bank of Canada, Capital Markets, Forbes Ignite, as well as tens and tens of new startups across the world, which is a very important part of it because they really need you so much to get that going. And she's regularly named on the who's who list of the technology list, and as a protagonist in the Harvard Business School, case studies, becoming CEO. So that's Shellye. She's the author, as we know, of Unapologetically Ambitious. Take risks, break barriers, and create success on your own terms. On your own terms. We'll talk about this later. On your own terms. It's a book that I'm sure will inspire you and provide you with tools to enable you to fight the battles, manage the trade-offs, and create, again, a life that you want. Again, I'll come back to you on this. You want. In our spare time, I know Shellye. She's a Forbes contributor, and very importantly, runs a gourmet dinner club. Again, we'll come back to that. And writes a blog that provides career advice, insights, and other musings for her career. And you can see that at Shellye.com. So, Shellye, the day is here. The time is now. And, I'm very, very intrigued with one thing about many other things is the title, Unapologetically Ambitious. I mean, what made you choose the title? If I may ask you that question.
Oh, absolutely. Great place to start. And first of all, Shraddha, thank you very much for hosting us today on Fuchsia World. And Niraj, thank you so much in terms of for doing this session with me. I'm really looking forward to it. So hi, everybody. Title. You know, it's interesting, but I knew when I wrote the book that I wanted the word ambition in the title for sure, because so often I was told I was ambitious and it wasn't necessarily a compliment. And I thought, that's kind of ridiculous. Everybody should be ambitious. And the unapologetic piece came from really the female side of me, because so many of us, especially women, I feel like we're almost raised from birth to apologize. And we apologize not just when we do something wrong. That's probably about 5%. But the other 95% is to make everybody feel better, to show empathy, show we care, to ease feelings and tensions. We use I'm sorry sometimes like salt. It just makes everything a little better, right, by saying it. And I thought, that's really what I'm going to call this book. Unapologetically ambitious, because everybody, I don't care who you are, everyone has the right to be ambitious, and you shouldn't have to apologize for it. It's absolutely okay to go after your aspirations and work hard to make an impact on the world.
Thank you, Shellye. I know what you said, and I like the anecdote around the salt and the sprinkle. But that leads me to my next very intriguing question I have, because the word ambition keeps coming back. And for most of the people, sometimes there is a confusion between the word ambition and desire. And I would really want you to talk about this in a little bit more detail, because the word is ambition, unapologetically ambitious. And the difference, ambition and desire, if I could ask you that little clarification and insights on that.
Absolutely. So when I think of ambition, I think of it's basically taking your desire, but it's actually putting it into action. Ambition is when you want to actually strive to, as I said, really make an impact. It's interesting. When I think of ambition is not just, do you want to be CEO, right? Oh, you could say that's ambitious. But I'll tell you, my mother, for example, is one of the most ambitious people I know. And she was a stay-at-home mom. It has nothing to do with what your title is. It has everything to do with the role and the impact you want to play, and then put action around it to play it. So she was involved and ran the PTAs. She was a deacon in the church. She was, right? So she wanted to make an impact in the areas in which she touched. So in that way, she was absolutely ambitious. We all have ambitions. And I think it's important not just to keep them as desires. What do you want to do? What are you thinking about? Oh, you have all these desires and all these hopes and things in your mind. But if you don't actually turn it into a plan or an objective and actually go after it with ambition, then you don't necessarily get to realize it and embrace and embody, right, all of that. So when I think of ambition, to me, it's really, what is it that you want to do? What do you aspire to do? To do meaning making an impact, achieving an objective, right? Or influencing others. All of those things can show ambition.
Thank you, Shellye. And I'm going to still stick to the word ambition and ask you another question on that. So you've achieved significant success.
In fact, Niraj, I can just invite all the viewers, if you have any questions, do drop in your comments, because it will be very important, and it will be interesting for Shellye also to answer them, and it will be a pleasure for me to take up those questions at the end of the session. That's in the last 10-15 minutes. So guys, go ahead and drop in your queries, and do remember that we are going to select at least 2 people for a free Kindle edition of Shellye's book, Unapologetically Ambitious.
Thank you, Shraddha. I think that's a good thing. We'd love to look forward to that last 15 minutes of question and answer session. So coming back to Shellye, you've achieved a great success as a CEO and a Fortune 500 board member. Not easy for a woman of color in the United States. Not easy. You know it. The world knows it. So where did your ambition come from? I mean, since we're talking ambition, where did your ambition come from?
It's interesting. I think it came from a couple places. One, I'm really fortunate in that I came from a family that really demonstrated a lot of ambition through our history. And I'm a big believer in the importance of understanding where you've come from and what your family history is. And I'm lucky. I actually write about it in the book. But my family, we actually have a family Bible. And in our family Bible, we actually have the list of, on my father's side, right? The family that came from France to Jamaica, spent a couple generations, came to the US, right? So you see in terms of just the focus and the strive to improve. And we also have the history on my mother's side, actually slave documents that show my ancestors that came from slavery and came all the way through. And so every step of the way, they were obviously ambitious, trying to gain more and more freedoms, right? More and more in terms of opportunity. And so being raised in that kind of environment, I was always raised to believe that I can have anything that I'm willing to work for, and to set my targets high. So fortunately, it was encouraged in me at home, even if it wasn't encouraged outside of home. And that really played a big role. The other thing that played a role, Niraj, is, I grew up in the 60s, which in the US was a really tough time. It was lots of civil rights was really the big focus. And for as many people that wanted civil rights, you had as many that didn't. And it became really clear to me that the odds just weren't in my favor to get what I wanted out of life. And that if I really wanted to make something happen, I was going to have to figure out how to improve my odds and how to do it. So the ambition also came from one of wanting to demonstrate and prove that I actually can make a contribution and I can make an impact, despite what I felt the world was telling me.
I think, Shellye, you've done very well. And I can tell you one thing for sure, that the generations behind you would be very, very proud of your achievements. And they're blessing you to keep going it forward. You've raised the bar of all the generations that, as you said, from France to Jamaica to here, from a slavery time to where you are. This is called a journey that is actually very compelling. So thank you for sharing that. Perhaps this could also be the time for me to ask you about this journey that we are talking about. If you can give me an overview of your journey to becoming the CEO. I mean, it's a big journey. It's a long journey. It must have gone through so many crossroads, last exit before toll. Should I do this? Whatever. So,
Yeah, and listen, it is so true. So it really all started with a fateful conversation with my guidance counselor. So in the US, and when you're a junior in high school, you have a conversation with your guidance counselor, which is what do you want to do? Are you going to college, to trade school, what have you? And so I had the conversation that I definitely plan to go to college. And she said, well, what do you want to do after that? And I said, honestly, I don't know. I've always been very goal oriented, but I don't know what I want to do. And she then asked me, and I give her so much credit for this. She said, well, what do you like to do? And I said, oh, my clubs. I mean, I was involved in all these different school organizations, the French Club, the American Field Service, the National Honor Society. I was even in Girl Scouts. I got engaged in whatever was going on, but more than in getting engaged, I tended to ultimately lead it. Eventually I'd be president of the group or vice president or something. And I really enjoyed that, because then you got a chance to pull people together and lead and figure out what you wanted to do, et cetera. So I was telling her all this, and she said, well, Shellye, running a club and running a business is a very similar thing. You pull people together to a common objective and go make things happen. And I said, oh, done. I'm going to go run a business. And then when I went to look, who are the people that run businesses? They were called CEOs. And I said, okay, I'm going to go be a CEO. I mean, the beauty of being naive enough, right, at 16 to really not knowing exactly what I was signing up for, and the audacity, but it gave me a goal, and I'm goal oriented. So I said, okay, now I've got a goal. And then literally, Niraj, I spent my entire career working on, so what has to be true for me to become CEO? How do I make it true? And that's how I think about planning, setting a goal, right? What has to be true? And then how do I make it true? Which is then building a plan and executing a plan. And literally every step of the way, it was like, okay, well, I need to go to the best business school because I've got to get the credential. I'm going to get into tech because it's a growing industry. So therefore opportunities are greater. Joined IBM, which was really like the Google or Apple of its day. It was the leading in tech. And I thought, great, IBM's a great company. I'll go be CEO of IBM. And literally, I spent 14 years rising through the ranks of IBM. And, I got to the point, I did well. I got to the point where my boss reported to Lou Gerstner, the CEO. There wasn't anybody higher than me in the company that looked like me. But it wasn't clear that I was actually going to be made CEO. And that was really my goal, not just success at IBM. And that's why ultimately I decided to leave and work my way to Silicon Valley, where after a couple of stops and officer level roles of a couple of newly public companies, I then got my opportunity to become CEO. I partnered with Gunjan Sinha and built an amazing company with a tremendous team over the years. Lots of ups and downs, as you do when you build a startup and you turn something around. But ultimately, Metric Stream today is a leader in governance, risk, and compliance with customers all over the world. And I'm so proud of the team and what they've accomplished.
Thank you, Shellye. I know, one thing that I picked up from this conversation is that you started very early.
Yes.
So that's a very important point for everyone to make a note. You started early and you were on it, and on it all through the entire journey. It's sounding very natural and very easy, but I can understand what dedication would have gone behind this. As you said, the ups and downs. So thank you for sharing that. So, today in this audience, Shellye, we have a lot of people who are in the very early or mid stage of the career, the kind of demographic that we have watching this at this point. And I'd definitely like to take this opportunity to ask you to give them some advice in the early and mid stages of their career from your own narrative.
Definitely. The first thing is you are responsible for your career. So many people aren't. And the analogy that I'd like to give is you would never spend, $2,000 for an airline ticket. Pack your bags, get yourself ready, get on the plane, put things up, strap yourself in, and then look to the pilot and say, so where are we going anyway? Right? That's crazy. You would never do that. Never. Yet we do that with our careers every day. We go to school and we get education and we invest in ourselves. We get certificates, right? We build experience. And then we join companies and we literally sit back and wait for them to tell us what they want us to do next. And that's kind of crazy. Own your career. When you own your career, it's good for the company too. The company wants you to develop skills, build capabilities, take on more and more responsibility, right? They want you to do that. So, harness and leverage that ambition and don't give up the ownership of your career, because at the end of the day, you're the only one that can really optimize for you. You know what you're capable of. You know what you're aspiring to. Other people can't read your mind. So number one, own your career. Number two, along the way, make sure you're letting people know what you want and what you need. So many times we keep it a secret. It's like, oh, one day I really want to be the director of marketing. I'm making it up, right? Or I want to head up engineering. And people come to me for career advice and they'll say, hey, that's what I want to do. And I say, wonderful. Who knows? And they look all sheepish like, well, what do you mean? Well, who have you told that that's what you want to do? Well, nobody. I like to tell people the universe cannot help you if you don't tell the universe what you want. So let people know what you want, because by doing that, they can then help you with now, well, what skills do you need? What experience? What kinds of things should you be doing to build up that capability? Because at the end of the day, we need to, it's a career, it's a constant learning scenario. We should always be learning and always be building skills. But if we have a direction in mind and we have help along the way, then we can make sure we're building skills that are valuable, right, to us, but also to the organizations in which we are contributing. So own your career. Let people know what you want to do. Those would be the first two.
Great, Shellye. Thank you for that. I like your analogies because you make a point very crisp, very clear, straight to the point. So moving on to another very important point that I think I would like to ask you. In your book, in the book itself, in the subtitle, you talk about risks.
Yes.
And why is taking risks so important? So that brings me to the question, what is the biggest risk that you might have taken?
Oh, goodness. So that's actually a very easy answer. The biggest risk I took was to join Zaplet as CEO. Zaplet was the precursor to Metric Stream. And let me just paint the picture for everyone.
Okay.
Some of you will remember, but very few, given the average age is probably on listening right now. Way back in 2002, I was at a company called LoudCloud. Ben Horowitz and Mark Andreessen were heading up that company. I was running marketing and sales. And I'm ready now for my CEO job. But the market is terrible, terrible, because the dot-com bubble had burst. And in Silicon Valley, it was just littered with companies that had gone out of business. And therefore, there were lots of CEOs looking for jobs. And here's Shellye saying, okay, I now have the skills, I now have the experience, I'm ready for my CEO job. I'm not from the Valley. I'm not an engineer. I didn't even look like a Valley CEO way back then. Unfortunately, it's still true today. But that's what I was ready to go do. And that was part of my plan. So I'm out there competing. And I said, you know what? I'm not going to get an A play. I'm not going to get a company that everybody thinks is going to be successful. Those will go to known entities. But I've been fixing things and turning things around my whole career. So I'm going to go get a company that needs fixing, but is invested in by a top tier firm. So Kleiner Perkins was the lead investor, Vinod Khosla, for Zaplet. So I took that job. But let me tell you, I knew it was in trouble, but I had no idea just how bad a shape it was in. So here it is, Niraj, and you can appreciate it. Here it is. I get there. The company is obviously burning money, so they're spending a lot more than they're actually taking in. As a matter of fact, they hadn't even signed a new customer in like 2 or 3 quarters because the market's so bad. They had all these fixed expenses. The value proposition of their product just didn't hunt. I mean, all kinds of issues. So when you say, what's the biggest risk? Well, that was it. Because honestly, if you looked at it from the outside and you were a betting person, you'd bet that this company was not going to make it. So to take that kind of role was a huge risk, especially as my first CEO job, right? Because if it failed, then the first one I did was a failure. Now, let me go back to taking risks. So why did I take the job? Well, I took the job because I tried to mitigate the risk. Top tier firm, Vinod Khosla, who's a Midas touch investor, right, is the partner on it. So mitigated risk, I'm bringing strong skills on that side. The other mitigated risk, I had a friend check out technology and make sure I could do something with it, mitigated risk. But the other one was, if it did fail, well, most people thought it was going to fail. It wasn't like it was going to, so I thought, what's the worst that can happen? Which is what I always ask myself when I take a risk. What's the worst that can happen, and can I live with it? And you know what? If you ask yourself that question, you'll find you can actually live with a lot of risk if you just face up to what it is and try to put a few mitigating factors, right, in the mix. And that's what I did. I said, all right, worst case, it will fail. But will that destroy me completely? I don't think so. And therefore, I took the risk.
Shellye, I knew it, but I have the $1 trillion answer right now. Why Reid Hoffman said about you that this is a woman that has brought about the biggest turnaround in Silicon Valley. Now I know for sure. Thank you for sharing that with us. And because there's a lot of time that we're talking about the risks here. So I'm going to take that one step further, because I know that we've got, entrepreneurship and risk kind of go hand in hand.
For sure.
And I know that in this audience, we have a lot of entrepreneurs. And so from your experience, what is important for entrepreneurs to focus on as they build their business?
So first thing is make sure that you actually have a value proposition that the market wants. What does that mean? That means make sure that you are solving a real problem, a problem that people are willing to pay for because it is so painful. If you're solving a problem that's a nice to have problem, or, if I have money, then I'll solve it. If not, then I won't. Then your business is subject to, being fickle, depending upon what's going on with the marketplace. So one, make sure you have a value proposition that the market wants. Two, and this is really important, everybody, because I see this all the time. Do not fall in love with your product. And when I say product, I'm using that generically. So that can be an actual product, a service, an offering, right? Product. Do not fall in love with your product. Now, you're probably thinking, what is she talking about? Well, listen, what happens when you fall in love with something? Let's take a baby. Niraj and I are both new grandparents, which is pretty exciting. But when you have your baby in your arms, right, you are absolutely in love with this baby. And nobody can tell you that your baby's ugly. Nobody can share any fault, because your baby is perfect because this is your baby, right? And if people mention, oh, this or that, no, you say, oh, no, you haven't seen her in the right light, right? Or you just don't know her as well as I do. I mean, all those things. Well, what happens is when you fall in love with your product, when people try to give you feedback, you say, oh, no, you just don't understand how to use it. Or, oh, no, it's really just another way, right, of handling it. Or, no, because you're defending it, because you love it. No. What you want to do is love the market. You want to love the customers that you are serving. That way, you want to meet all of their needs and all of their requirements, right? And you want to therefore adapt and adjust your product and your offering to fit their needs because you love them. So don't fall in love with your product. Fall in love with the market that you are targeting. That way you keep your eyes wide open. Next is team, right? Value prop, fall in love with your market, and team. The people that you surround yourself with will help you be successful or will not. I will tell you, nobody does anything by themselves. They say, oh, Shellye turned around. No, I happen to be CEO, but I happen to be CEO of an amazing team. We pulled together an organization, right, with all types of backgrounds and skills, and everybody brought everything to bear. We don't do anything alone in this world. So it's all about the team. So you want to make sure that you're bringing on the right team that complements you, different skills, different backgrounds, different perspectives, right, to strengthen. And you want to make sure that you are working hard as a leader to support and enable and encourage and develop that team, because that team is what will ultimately define whether you're successful or you're not. And we built an amazing team at MetricStream.
Thank you, Shellye. I think a very interesting one line you said that's going to stay with me. Don't love your product, love the market, because we tend to get so defensive once we fall in love with a product that we're not open to any innovation in that. No, you guys are not doing it right. It's your fault. I mean, okay. Very, very insightful, very insightful. Thank you for that. I think that it's a big one. It's a big one. One section of your book still intrigues me. And that is about, what is it that you mean by saying dismantle impostor syndrome?
Yes, imposter syndrome. Okay, so imposter syndrome, for those of you that don't know what that means, what it means is when you suddenly find yourself in an environment where you're not comfortable and you're thinking, oh man, I don't really belong. I don't either have the skills or the knowledge. I'm not as good, right, as these people. Or somebody offers you an opportunity and you're afraid to take it because you're thinking, oh man, I'm not ready. I don't know. I don't know enough. You start all those little doubts that come into your mind of whether or not you belong and you're capable or not, etc. That is the imposter syndrome, the feeling that one day they're going to figure out that I don't really know as much as they think I know, right? All of that is imposter syndrome. And it turns out that most people suffer from imposter syndrome at some point or another. But studies show that women suffer from it more than men, but women of color suffer from it the most. And it's interesting. It's not really surprising to me because we live in a world that is very judgmental, very judgmental. We have there are so many things, media, right? What's going on in the world, et cetera, that tell us all the ways in which we're not quite good enough. So it's no surprise that we have this imposter syndrome. But the key is not to let it stop us from being successful. Now, listen, you're probably looking at me saying, oh, Shelly's never had imposter syndrome. Oh, yes, I have. More than have. I still suffer from it from time to time. It's crazy. When I walked into my first board meeting at Verizon, all right, I'm now, I've had 30 plus years of experience. I've sat on other boards before. I've done all these things. And now I'm getting ready to walk into my Verizon board meeting and look around. And I'm like, oh my God, the CEO of Walgreens and the CEO of Verizon and the CEO of Aetna and the CEO, all these people, right? The head of, the Olympics, all these people are sitting around the table. And I'm thinking, wow, do I really belong here? That's crazy. Right? That's crazy, but it happens. So what do you do about it? Number one, and I talk a lot more about this in the book. So if you suffer from it, you'll definitely get some insights because I suffer from it all the way through. But number one, realize it's not personal because we all feel it. It's something else that's going on. So when you feel it, it's almost like I used to tell my kids with TV. Stuff would come on TV and I'm like, as you know, that's make-believe, right? Life doesn't work that way. I would constantly say that television is not real, right? Well, imposter syndrome, when you start to feel it, just tell yourself, this isn't real. This isn't real, right? It's just kind of like TV. It's just kind of happening. Well, if that's not enough to get over it, then, the reason you're being invited into the room or being offered a job or being included, right, in an event or a meeting is because they believe that you're going to add value and be able to contribute. Well, believe them. Don't doubt them. Believe them. Right now, if that still doesn't work, then my number one trick, which I've done my entire career, is fake it. Act like you know what you're doing until you actually do. Fake it until you make it. So you put your shirt on, put your shoulders back, and you walk in with confidence because eventually you are going to know what you're doing. Everybody is learning. Every time you take another leap forward, whether it is for a career or opportunity, realize that you think you're going up, but you're really starting at the bottom rung of the next ladder. So of course you don't know everything yet. Nobody does when they get started. So fake it till you make it. Remember, everybody feels this way. Believe people when they tell you that you're capable and confident.
Thank you, Shellye. I think you really, really have some insights here for a lot of people to learn from, and that's a very, very, very insightful thing from a chief executive officer past. Another point, and it's a section I've picked up from your book. Very unusual. We all need it. We don't talk about it, and we wonder how we can do it. And you bring out this point so emphatically in the book. Find your cheerleaders.
Yes.
Wow. And of course we know, but please tell me, this is so crucial. This is so critical.
Yeah, it really is. And by the way, when Niraj says cheerleaders, and I talk about cheerleaders, I mean cheerleaders. Rah, rah, go, Niraj, go, Shraddha, go. Real cheerleaders. Matter of fact, they're coming into the way, but I'm going to show you. See these balloons?
Yeah.
Those came from cheerleaders because today is the day, right? In terms of for my overall book release. So I'm a huge believer in cheerleaders. What are cheerleaders? Cheerleaders are the people that remind you how capable you are, right? How talented, the skills, etc. when you're feeling less than. Because back to the point I was making earlier, we live in a very judgy world, right? And by the way, we're going to make mistakes. We're going to trip. We're going to stumble, right? That's going to happen. Everybody does. If you aren't doing that, then you aren't pushing yourself enough. Everybody has those times. Now, that doesn't make them any easier to handle. So when they happen and you're thinking, oh gosh, I just can't do it, right? This is just too hard, or I can't believe I failed and now I don't want to go forward, or whatever it is, when you're feeling like that, that's when your cheerleaders come to play. That's when your cheerleaders say, oh, no. You are the same person you were before this happened, right? This incident doesn't define you. Look at all that you've done in the past. right? They're the ones that build you up and remind you and give you that encouragement and that power and the balloons, right? When you need them. They're the ones that have your back. They're the ones that give you that strength when you don't feel you have it yourself. Everybody needs cheerleaders. And I was so, so fortunate. My husband was my biggest cheerleader. Absolutely, absolutely was. But I'm fortunate because my kids now play. Matter of fact, the balloons are from my kids. My kids now play, that cheerleader role, which is wonderful. I've got friends, out there that are playing that cheerleader role because frankly, I still need cheerleaders. Remember I told you I still have imposter syndrome? I still need cheerleaders. There are still times when I am pushing myself or taking that next risk or trying to figure out, okay, can I continue to make more impact? And I need that too. So go find your cheerleaders. And if you don't have them, right? If you don't have someone right now today that is in your court that's constantly reminding you how awesome you are, then appoint somebody. Reach out to a cousin, a sister, a friend, right? A mother, it doesn't matter. And tell them, listen, Shellye said that I need a cheerleader. And so I'm now appointing you my cheerleader. And here's what this means. So when I call you up and I'm sounding like, I'm not good, I'm not capable, I'm down in the dumps, your job is to build me up because we all need it.
Yes, Shellye, that's so insightful. Now I know why the first word of the title of your book, Unapologetically, is because I think we should unapologetically ask for cheerleaders.
Absolutely.
And because, there are so many people who want to do it and because out of fatigue, at some point you begin to feel that you want to give up. You need a pat on your back to say, guys, I've gone through this. Do it. So thank you for that, for the cheerleader part of it. I'm sure we all I need my cheerleaders too, even now. So who doesn't? I mean,
it's so true. Absolutely. So true. Because you know what? Life is hard. People don't tell you that when you're getting started, when you're bright and shiny and whatever. But let me tell you, life is hard for everyone. And what happens is we see people and we say, oh gosh, they make it look so easy, right? And so many stories are, well, how did you get here? And people tell you, oh, I took step 1, step 2, step 3, and boom, right? I'm there. And you're thinking, oh, it's so easy for everybody else. So when it's hard for me, I must not have what it takes. When it's hard for me, right, then maybe I'm not capable. When it's hard for me, well, no, it is hard for everybody. So when it's hard for you, that's okay. That means you are pushing yourself. It means you are learning. It means you are growing. All those things are positive. So when that's happening, keep pushing. That's why I wrote the book. I wanted to share, hey, it was hard for me too. And I share those hardships, but I also share a lot of strategies and approaches, right? Techniques to actually work through all those different kinds of situations. So when it's hard, don't quit. Keep pushing.
Great. I have two other things that I have in mind to ask you. One is, of course, because you do that so well, you say, find your mentors.
Yes. Yes. Mentors have played just an incredibly important role for me throughout my life. And everybody needs mentors. But here's the deal. I learned early, really early. Matter of fact, let me just tell a quick story, Niraj, if you don't mind. I was about, 6 years into my career at IBM. And IBM decided that they wanted to make sure that their high potential employees had mentors. But they wanted to do it a different way. They said, instead of assigning mentors, we'll ask people who they want their mentors to be. And I said, okay, great. So I got asked and I said, I picked a gentleman. His name was Roland Harris. He was a couple levels above me. I knew him and I thought he liked me. So I thought he'd be a good one. Wrote his name down. Well, a few days later, I get a call. It's Roland. Hi, Roland. Shellye, you put my name down to be your mentor. He doesn't sound happy. And I'm like, well, Roland, I thought you liked me. And he said, Shellye, you've got me. Go get somebody else. And I went, I've got Roland? So that taught me two things in that one quick conversation. One, I had mentors that I didn't even realize I have. A mentoring relationship does not have to be some formal, you are now the mentor, I am now the mentee, right? And two, I can have more than one mentor. I can have as many as I want. And literally those two pieces of, awareness really led me to the strategy that I deployed my entire career, which was I didn't ask people to be my mentor, because I find if I asked them, a lot of people would say no, and they'd have excuses because people are busy and they're concerned about the time commitment. Nothing personal, it's just the time commitment. So I stopped asking. I just started treating people like mentors. Because what is a mentor at the end of the day? A mentor is someone who helps you think through things, right? That gives you advice, counsel, and perspective. Well, you can kind of ask for that without a formal invitation. So I did. And what I found is that if I did that often enough, and if I was a good mentee, and here's the key, because most people are terrible mentees. So I talk about how to be a good mentee in the book also. A good mentee closes the loop with mentors. A good mentee says, thank you for the advice. Here's what I did, and here's how it worked, right? Now, why is that important? Because the word relationship, mentee, mentor, it is a relationship, which means there is value going both ways. If all you're doing is take advice, take counsel, take this, and you never give anything back to the mentor, then they just feel like they're being used. Now, what can you possibly give to a mentor? It's the intrinsic feeling of satisfaction, of pride, in knowing that they've been helpful. But if you don't tell them that they've been helpful, they don't get that feeling and they don't get anything out of the relationship, right? Just as a very simple thing. So that's number one rule of being a good mentee, is make sure you always close the loop so you can actually build a relationship. And then what I found is, even if I didn't formally have relationships, that if I continued to do well, people started claiming me. Oh, Shellye, oh yeah, I give her advice from time to time, right? So it was great, it worked. So anyway, the book talks about this, in great detail. So feel free to take a read and see, but it's really worked for me. I'm so glad you asked that question, Niraj.
Shellye, two words that you said, close the loop and relationship, is something that you actually take it in every aspect of life, with a client, with a team, with a mentor, mentee, everywhere. You've got to close the loop, and you've got to give that sense of relationship and gratitude. And even the person who's giving has to know what happened. I mean, ask what happened, and not just let it be that I said something and that's the be it all. So one more question, Shellye, because we talked about unapologetically ambition, risk, entrepreneurship, cheerleader, imposter syndrome. But in all this, I want to be clear, and this is something very close to my heart, because, worldwide, we sometimes kind of not sure how we handle it to do it, is about the value system. Live your values. It's just so easy to go haywire and, start to compromise. So, and you held that all your life. And I think it's a very important part of it. So please tell us something more about that.
Yes, I think it's very important that you remain true to who you are and to your values. And those aren't something that should be compromised. There are a lot of things that you can compromise on, but I don't feel values is one of those things to compromise. Now, we all have our own sets of values. So I'm not trying to put my values on anyone else. But what I am saying is trust your values. Do not compromise them as you make decisions and as you make trade-offs. And trust me, over the course of your career, there are going to be times when things will happen and the easy answer, right, or the easy path might be something that goes against a value of yours. Don't be tempted. Don't be tempted, because at the end of the day, and when I say at the end of the day, I mean at the end of the day. At the end of the day, all we have is our reputation. All we have is the integrity that we create. And if you're out there with your values just letting them be loose instead of tight, well, it's going to impact your integrity. It's going to impact your reputation. It's going to impact all of those things. So always be true to those. One of the questions I used to ask myself, if I ever came across something that's, what what should I do, right? Should I do this? Should I not do this? Because there's a lot of gray areas. If it's all black and white, it's easy. It's all the gray stuff, right? That's hard. I'd ask myself, all right, if my decision, if what I said, if what I did showed up right on the Wall Street Journal front page of the newspaper, could I live with that? And if I could, then I did it. And if I couldn't, then I didn't. And it was a really easy decision criteria for me is if the world knows, right, can I live with it? Now, might I be embarrassed or might I be that? That's one thing, but could I live with it? If it went against my values or it showed me as a completely different person, right, than I am, then of course not. So I just found that as an easy way to think about, right, and imagine my decisions to make sure that I could stay true to what was important to me.
Thank you, Shellye. I think I'm looking at the clock and I think we've got audience and I'm sure we'll have some question and answers. And at this time, I think Shraddha, if you're around somewhere, I know you are, if you can come online and, have some questions. You're muted, Shraddha. So.
Yes.
Oh, yes, I am back.
Okay.
And I think it was wonderful listening to Shellye again. She has been guiding us all these 3 months, talking about imposter syndrome, talking about cheerleaders, and it's always been so enlightening. But Shellye, today is the day for celebration, and sneak peek to all the viewers of the book. So here is it. And I would request everyone to get your copy on Amazon.in and Amazon.com. It is there, and I'm sure you will love this book. And Shellye is always going to be here every month, giving her piece of advice always. So taking up some of the comments that we've received. So Shellye, I'm going to pick up 3 or 4 comments that I have received. One of them comes from Roma Jain. She says, hello, Shellye. I would like to ask your view on one common problem that women often face in every walk of life. Women sometimes get jealous of other women's accomplishments and may even try to sabotage their prospects. If this happens to a woman, how should one handle this without trying to get even, as 2 wrongs never make a right? So how would you deal with such a situation?
Yes, no, I've definitely faced that kind of situation. And by the way, it's not limited to women, just so that you know. When people start to, have an issue with me, where suddenly they either are intimidated or they jealous, who knows? A lot of times it happens because the other person is actually insecure. And therefore, they see your success or your strengths as not as strength, but as something that they compare with, right? That's somehow against them. And so therefore they want to diminish you to build themselves up. So realize, number one, where it's coming from. It's really coming from an insecurity. So what do? It's not what you would expect. I actually shine the light on them. When I say shine the light, meaning I actually compliment them in public. I give them, point out what they're good at, right? And strengths. I do all that I can where in public, right, I am a big supporter of this person. Now, why am I doing that? 2 reasons. One, I just told you they're insecure. So by doing that, you're kind of feeding it to help them build security. But 2, if behind the scenes they are undermining me, people are going to think, what is their problem? Shellye does nothing but support this person and compliment them. And then they're back here backstabbing her. And suddenly it's not my issue. It's their issue. So if you actually, it's a little counterintuitive, but when somebody is actually doing that for you, actually just shine the light on them. Give them all kinds of praise and support for skills that they have, right? I'm not saying make things up, but for skills that they have, for projects they do, right? For what they've accomplished, just make sure you are doing that very publicly, very genuinely, because that way you actually end up diminishing how they can possibly hurt you, because people will see the disconnect. That's been my strategy.
That's great. And I hope, Roma, if you are watching this, this answers your question. Great. So we have one more question coming up, Shellye, from Vinita Praveen Verma. She asked that, hi, Shellye, I have seen your LinkedIn profile, tremendous amount of experience that you're having. I just want to know, how do you manage to have a work-life balance?
All right. So you just hit a trigger word with me. And I talk about this in the book too. Work-life balance. I hate that term. Hate it, detest it. I don't like it. All right. So I think you got that point. I don't like it. Why don't I like it? Because what is a balance? A balance is a fixed structure, right? It's a pole, a thing across the top, and two things that are even at all times. Even at all times, static. Life doesn't work that way. Life is like this, right? That's not like this. So I feel like that whole term was created to make everyone feel perpetually guilty, right? Because no one can hold it even. So no. I believe in work-life integration. I am one person. I have my professional priorities. I have my personal priorities. I put them together and I set my priorities, right? Integration. So don't judge, back to judge. Don't judge yourself on this fictitious work-life balance. Figure out what's important to you professionally, what's important to you personally. Put them together and then figure out what you can do and then frankly, what you can't. And either let go of what you can't, find someone else to do what you can't, whatever it is. But the key is I call it ruthless. Ruthless prioritization is really how I've done it. And what does that mean? Gosh, here, let me give you a real good example. My husband, all right? So my husband and I, our kids are now little, we're both working. And so hair. Well, on days that my husband was taking the kids or doing things, he had to do her hair, okay? My husband had never done little girls' hair. And oh, by the way, my daughter had thick, curly, right? Really challenged hair. So it was all about combing and braiding and whatever. Okay, so hey, we all have to participate. So Scotty's up for the challenge. But here's the deal. The first like 2 months of him trying to do her hair looked pretty jacked up. I mean, it wasn't great. It wasn't like I had done it. I had to let go. I couldn't come back and say, oh, let me fix that, right? Because if I came back and said, let me fix that, number one, I'd undermine his confidence, right? I wouldn't give him the chance to practice. And then all of a sudden it's my job again. So no, she went to school with her hair looking kind of funky for a few months. But you know what? She doesn't know and she didn't care. She's a little kid, right? She didn't care. So you have to be willing to let go, because do I know that there were people seeing my daughter thinking, where is her mother? What's up with her hair? Yes, there were absolutely people thinking that. But you know what? I don't care about them either. What I care about is my family. I care about my priorities. I care about being able to do a good job. Here are things I care about. So when I say ruthless prioritization, it literally is prioritize, do what you can, let go of the rest. And when I say let go, when you let go, refuse to be judged on certain things. Because honestly, if you spend your whole life in service of what others think and how others are going to judge you, it's really hard to have a happy, content life, because too many people out there are not happy and not content. And therefore they're going to take the opportunities to judge you to make themselves feel better. Remember that insecurity concept I talked about? It exists everywhere. So don't fall into the trap, because when you do, then you feel you have to be perfect at everything. And guess what? Nobody is, and nobody can.
Absolutely right. And I think, I hope, Vinita, this answers your question. And for you also, work-life balance shouldn't matter a lot. It should be easy for you to manage it, like a pro, how Shellye does it.
Oh, wait. I never said it was easy. I want to be careful, Shraddha. I didn't say it was easy. It's not easy. Right. It's not easy.
But that term shouldn't be just bothering our minds or blocking our heads in any of the ways. All right. Great. And there are a couple of congratulations congratulations, Shellye, from a lot of people coming up. And I have seen three questions which have been repeated by 3 people, a similar question. I would like to just mention their names. It's coming from Rashmi, Anna, and Leslie. All of these three people have a similar question. They are asking about there is a point in life where you stand at the crossroads and you are unable to decide some things. You are confused whether it is about your career, whether it is about taking decisions at some position. So they feel confused. How can we overcome this confusion when we are at this point?
Yes, it's the best thing is to keep your eyes on where it is that you're trying to go. What is the goal? It's really just like business. In business, you have a vision, right? And then you set goals to achieve the vision and objectives to be able to execute against those goals. And that's what keeps you aligned to help you decide what you need to do every day. Well, personally, it's the same thing. What are your goals? What are you trying to achieve? And once you have that clear, then as you make decisions, use that as your guide. For many people who can't decide, ooh, do I take this? Do I do that? I feel stuck. I'm not sure. It tends to be because they haven't gotten clarity around where they're heading. And if you don't have clarity on where you're heading, then in all honesty, it doesn't matter what you do. It's kind of like driving. If you don't care where you end up, you can turn down any street, right? And keep roaming around. Well, career's the same way. If you don't pick a destination to begin with, then you can just drive around, right? And you'll see a lot of interesting sights. You'll get some really, cool perspectives. And some people need to do that for a while before they figure out where they want to go. That's okay. But don't stress over it. It's one or the other, right? Spend time thinking about where you want to be. What do you want to achieve? What do you want to impact? And then with that in mind, use that as your rubric, as your decision criteria for deciding what you do up to that point.
Right. Got it. So I think we are done with these questions today. And again, I am extremely excited to congratulate Shellye for this book launch. And I'm sure that every one of you would be going to Amazon and pick up your edition. Your edition.
Yep, upside down. There it is. It's got a cool cover too. See, that's me.
Absolutely. And let me just. This is.
Hey, and Shraddha, did you pick winners? Did you pick winners for the Kindles?
Yes. So, I would select, so Shellye, we have 5 people. We have, in fact, 7 people who have sent their questions. Maybe you can pick some of the questions that you liked. Maybe we can pick up them.
Oh, don't make me pick. You have to do a random. You'll have to put the names in and pick 2.
Okay, then we can just, we can select these 2 people, Roma Jain and Vinita Verma.
All right. Congratulations.
Yes, so you can just get in touch with us in the comments below after this session so that we can coordinate and give you the link for the Kindle edition. So congratulations, everyone.
Well, thank you. Thanks so much, everybody. And Niraj, thank you so much for the conversation.
Just one last line. I think we really enjoyed this conversation today. Really, really enjoyed, very insightful. And I am very sure, and I also wish you good luck, that this book, Unapologetically Ambitious, would become the New York bestseller very soon. We look forward to that. And I know it's a very, very good tool book. So I know that this is not a book to just read. This is a book to read and practice. This is the difference between many books. This is walk the talk, practice.
Well, thank you. I absolutely appreciate it. Have a good rest of your evening, everyone, and morning for those that are in the US like me. Thank you again.
Thank you so much for being a wonderful audience, everyone. Signing off. Bye.
Bye.